Okay, this short discussion will be focused on some various brand strategies that can be used and exploited to be able to take advantage of different features that brands offer within a collection of products that a firm may have. So you remember the idea of a brand or a product array that features different products and categories and then different product lines. We can also have ideas that are associated with extending product lines and product mixes across a brand, and we call those brand extensions. So we want to be able to leverage or take advantage of the firm's good name or the product's good name, and get customers to maybe buy other products that are associated with the brand, by bridging the products by using the brand name itself. So line extensions would be additional products that are created within a product line. Then we have category extensions that take the product name and bring it to multiple product types or categories that may or may not be related to each other. So when we think about brand extensions, here's an example where we have Axe body spray, and then we have Axe shampoo, then Axe deodorant. All of these are different products, product types, if you will, but they all have the Axe name. And note also, though, that they're all closely associated with each other, and that sort of makes sense that they should be. That would be a brand extension. If you can think about maybe sort of across a mix, maybe, where we have different products. Now, the one thing you think about, though, is the same market, the same actual consumer, our hope will buy all three of these things, and these are all fairly complementary types of products. The line extension is similar. However, what we're doing here is we've got the exact same need that's being met, but different versions of the product are being created. So this might be a filling in type of a strategy where we've got multiple products that all produce the same benefit for the customer. These would be, most likely, these products would be cannibalistic to some extent, where if you buy one, you're probably not going to buy the other. But the benefit is it gives the market a lot more diversity, and it's almost like moves to a customization type of a strategy. But that's a line extension. So we're extending a line in this case, and as opposed to the brand extension where we're creating multiple products with the same brand. The category extension is a much more dramatic extension of the product beyond the brand extension. A category extension brings the brand name into very distinct product categories where these products are generally, they may or may not be related to each other. In this case, we have a printer, we have a laptop computer, and we have a desktop computer, maybe all created by the same company, perhaps Dell or Compaq or Apple or whomever. But these products, while they may go together, they are distinctly different products with different technologies, and but they do share the brand name. Okay, so these are different ideas of extensions. We have a brand extension, a line extension, and a category extension. And again, we want to use the good name of the brand that's been developed to carry it across all of the different new products that we're offering. We can extend the idea of branding strategies in two ways. One is to use an umbrella branding strategy or a family of brands branding strategy. This is a case where we attach the same name to all of the different products that we will use. So every new product introduction that we offer will include that name. So subsequent product introductions will be easier for the customer to understand. There will be higher initial awareness levels for new customers as we introduce a new product. And this actually takes advantage of some real positive or strong financial implications where the cost of introducing a new product becomes less because we're using the same name across all of the different products. So umbrella branding then uses the same name for all the products that we're going to offer, new products and the like. A house of brands approach, also called a standalone branding strategy, says that what we're going to do is we're going to have a new brand associated with each major category of products that we're going to offer. Okay, and so we saw this with the Sears Holding Company, and that's an example where we have the brand Sears, we have the brand Kmart, we have the brand Die Hard, we have the brand Craftsman, we have the brand, whatever. Every new major product could conceivably have a new brand associated with it. Kellogg's does this in the sense that they have the umbrella of Kellogg's, but each product they have, like Fruit Loops or Cocoa Krispies or Keebler, a lot of times their products that they offer have a subsequent brand that they are trying to develop. So that to some degree is a house of brands approach. But generally speaking, if you have a conglomerate where you have a company with lots of different subsidiaries or holdings, sometimes they'll each have their own brand name that they'll develop, each subsidiary will. One of the benefits of this is that if something happened poorly, like if something negative happened to one brand, that negativity won't necessarily bleed over into another product line because the other product line has a different name associated with it. So while it costs more to do this strategy, because you can't take advantage of the same branding equity that's been developed over time, the benefit is that if one brand fails, it doesn't necessarily impact the other brands that are associated with it. Okay, so that's kind of one of the key things to think about. Also, when we do multi-branding strategies like this, it allows us to better separate the markets that we serve. So like, for instance, the Clorox Corporation, they happen to own Burt's Bees, the lip balm and the salve from bees. Now, Burt's Bees is a brand that generated from Maine, and a lot of people who follow Burt's Bees are real naturalists, and they're really into the environment and all of this. And if they knew that the Clorox Corporation owned Burt's Bees, they'd, it would impair their sales from this particular market segment. Like you wouldn't call it Clorox lip balm. I mean, people would never buy it. It would be just, people wouldn't do that because of the association of what Clorox has with chemicals. So that's an example of where they would definitely want to use a house of brands approach in identifying their Burt's Bees products versus their Clorox products. All right, other strategies that we can use. Co-branding is a general term where we take two different brands and bring them together to form a single new product. So multiple companies can join together to create a new product, like Marriott Hotels and IKEA, who may create a new European hotel brand that's geared towards millennials. Generally, we could use one brand as an ingredient for another. That could be a co-branding opportunity. Or maybe if there are retailers who share the same locations together, like Barnes & Noble and Starbucks, that can happen as well. We could also have co-branding situations where you have internal brands. I mentioned Kellogg's Fruit Loops. Those would be two sort of brands that work with each other a little bit. Other ideas is like Procter & Gamble. Maybe they both own Scope and Crest, and Scope and Crest could come together where Crest offers a toothpaste with Scope flavored breath freshener, something along those lines. So here's the deal where we're taking two brands and bringing them together for specific benefits that we would want to gain. So certainly each brand will support the other. It allows each brand to reach the other brand's markets and it helps lower overall marketing communication costs when two brands come together. You're sharing equity basically from one brand to the next, and so that's certainly a good thing. Difficulties that emerge from co-branding is that you can become overexposed, you can get your brand out too much, so it's something where it's not exclusive anymore. Certainly, if one brand starts to perform negatively, that could hurt the other brand's image. And you lose a little bit of control. Like you lose some of the control of your brand to the partner that you're branding with. Okay, so there are positives. There are probably far more positives than negatives. That would be generally the idea. But still, there are things to be concerned about or consider. Other elements of co-branding or other types of co-branding that we can think about that we've alluded to already, the idea of ingredient branding and then the idea of self-branding. So ingredient branding is certainly when we take a component within the product and we use that component as a selling piece. So one company, one of the companies and its product is primarily the host, and another company is the added value. So you might have like Intel inside a computer. That was a tagline for Intel processors being placed inside a computer. It might be a Dell computer that has an Intel processor in it, and the Intel processor would be the ingredient. So that's and then that would be a selling point to sell more Dell products. Self-branding is another aspect, which is slightly different and unique, actually. So basically, self-branding is when you have a brand within a brand that's created by it. And the example here is that we have Tide detergent, and they have created a unique smell called Everfresh or scent. And so now Everfresh is a brand that is used inside Tide's detergents, and so Everfresh now can also be used elsewhere. It can be used in air fresheners, it can be used in deodorants, it could be used all over the place as its own brand, and it was created as a function of another brand. So it's a brand within a brand is basically the idea of a store or self-brand concept. Another idea that we move to, and again, these are just different uses of brands. So we have store brands as well, sometimes also referred to as private label brands. This is a situation where a local supermarket or store or pharmacy or a local company of some type or regional company will have a product line that uses their own private name. So Target has its Archer Farms brand, Kroger's Private Selection, and Costco uses Kirkland Signature. And so these local companies or local brands or small regional brands do not produce the product. Target does not produce the Archer Farms products. What they do is they find a producer who's willing to produce the product, and then they package it under the Archer Farms name. So Target owns the Archer Farms brand, and they pay for the production of the product. And so this allows them to have their own competing brand in the marketplace that they control. The retailer then can offer products that are their own version as competitors to national brands, is what we would call the other, a national brand versus a store or private label brand, and at a lower price, giving customers a better value and option within the store. So those are store brands, followed by licensing opportunities. So once you have a brand and you have equity built up in the brand, there are opportunities to lease or sell your brand to others so that they could use it. So it might be the case where somebody has a product or a production, and I have a good brand name and they want to use it. So this might be like a franchising type of a situation even, where I run an auto shop and I want to use a certain type of Valport paint or something, or some type of a car part or product or service. And so I will actually use the right to use the name of the product, and then I will use the product in my process to perform the service. And I'll pay for that right. I'll pay a certain percentage or fee to be able to use the name in order to produce the good. So there's not a lot of risk involved here. You have to monitor some of the use of your brand and make sure the brand is right. Another licensing opportunity here is for sports teams who or organizations who have the opportunity to sell their brand, like a sports team will sell their brand or their logo to a shirt company, and the shirt company will create shirts with the logo on it. And then every time somebody buys a shirt that has the logo on it, a portion of that sale will go back to the ball team because that logo is licensed to the shirt company who has the rights to use it and then make money off of it. So that's another example of licensing that happens fairly often. You have to again monitor product quality and make sure your brand is being protected. That shirt that's being produced, you don't want it to be really, really poor quality because then people will associate the poor quality shirt with the brand and it'll impair the overall brand of the team's brand image. So that's something to think about with licensing. But again, it's another option. So there are lots of ways, lots of strategies here that we use branding for, and lots of ways we leverage a brand in order to um, either create new markets, create new products, extend product lines, add other brands to enhance the brand image that we have now. We can license brands and so forth. One last element here when we think about like strategies to actually like use our brand would be in global branding. So we want to oftentimes bring a product to different markets, and if those markets are overseas or in a different culture, then we need to be careful about how we use that brand. So there are three basic concepts associated with global branding. We have standardization. In a standardization branding technique, we want to use the same brand worldwide or everywhere we go. If you have a brand that would resonate across multiple cultures, it's not culturally insensitive, a brand that you want to invest in a global sense, then that's something that can be done. Gillette is a brand of like razors and grooming products that can be used worldwide, and it is. So they use a standardization type of an approach. A second approach is something called adaptation through positioning. So what this might mean is that we have different positioning strategies for our product or brand depending on the different region of the world that we're in. So in one region, so like Mercedes, for instance, in the US market is considered a high-end luxury brand. However, Mercedes in a European market is less luxury and more average, if you will, more everyday type of thing. So like in the US, it still seems odd for us to think of Mercedes like a Mercedes truck or a Mercedes cargo van. That's still kind of a little foreign to us because we think of Mercedes as being kind of a high-end luxury personal vehicle. But Mercedes happens to be a really big producer of vans and trucks to haul to haul whatever for companies would use them. And so a Mercedes moving truck would be a little bit odd to us here in the US, but it wouldn't be odd to people in, say, Europe at all. That'd be something common. Because it's more of a common vehicle. And that's an idea of a positioning strategy that adapts depending on where the product is sold. Another adaptation would be the adaptation of the brand itself. And this is a case where it might be like you have a brand, but you may not have any brand equity or knowledge or awareness of the brand in another culture. And so what you want to do is you want to team up with somebody who is culturally known there. So here's an example of like General Mills, which is a US brand, and Nestle, which is a Swiss brand, and it's very well known, or more well known in Europe than General Mills is. So if General Mills was to bring a product to Europe, a lot of people aren't going to know who General Mills is, but they all know who Nestle is. So it makes sense to be able to team up with another brand and sell General Mills products under a different name, in order to be able to resonate with that local market. Okay, so we had global branding, which we talked about, store branding, we had licensing, we had co-branding opportunities, we had different types of co-branding, and then we had the House of Cards, House of Brands approach. We also had the umbrella approach, and then we had extensions, category, product, and line and brand line extensions. So there's probably a dozen or so different strategies here that we can focus on when we think about branding that should be familiar to you now. Now, what makes all of this work? And the reason why brand and branding is possible is something called brand equity. Brand equity will be something that we actually focus on, as it results to the value, dollar value, or the amount of the brand's worth to the firm. Okay, so if we were to try to put a dollar figure on what a brand is worth, that dollar figure would be the equity that the firm has associated with the brand. And basically there's a technical way we can think about this where we calculate the difference between what a brand is worth and what its costs are, and that's equity. So the set of assets, and then the liabilities linked to the brand, add together to provide value to the product or the service relative to the firm's customers. So basically what we do is we put together a value figure of what the firm has put into the product, to the brand, and what builds brand equity. And what we want to do is we want to look at what that brand equity does for us relative to the average or typical brand in the product category. Okay, so let's first talk about what builds a brand up. And basically there are 5 things here that we can think about as elements that build a brand's dollar figure or value to the firm. One would be its awareness. So the more the customers are aware of our name, the more value it has to us. Loyalty, so the more not only are customers aware of our brand, but the better that they keep coming back to us, the more loyal they are, the more resilient the brand is among our customers. Again, the more value it adds to us. The perceived quality and the associations that are made. We talked about brand associations before. So brand associations deal with what the customer thinks about when they think about our brand, like its personality and other reactions, like whether they're motivated to buy or other things that they think about from their memory that they associate with our brand. And generally we want those to be positive. Perceived quality, and so in this sense there's a huge, strong, very real link between our brand name and what people think of our quality. So we want to make sure that's a strong association, and we want to make sure that the association is towards high quality. So there are 2 things there we want to think about. And then finally, brand assets is a category of tools that we use. So the name of the brand, the logo of the brand, the color scheme, any type of jingles or songs that we use, the spokesperson for the brand, the elements that we use, the actual tools that we use, I guess, to create the brand itself are our brand assets. That's what those are. Those are the brand assets. And we want to put money in designing those and creating those. We want to make sure that there's a lot of consistency across those. so that they send the same message to the customer and so on. Okay, so we actively as marketers work to increase the value or increase the effect that these 5 things have. And when we do that, we increase what we call the value of the brand, or what we call brand equity. Okay, so we want to be able to measure brand equity. And so in order to do this, we look at the difference of value between our brand and a generic version of the product. And when we do that, we can capture the value of our brand relative to its brand equity. So if I was doing a survey and I wanted to know how much value does the name Shell have in gasoline, like Shell gasoline, a gas station, I could survey customers and I could ask them 2 questions. How much are you willing to pay for gas at Shell? Like how much per gallon? And then I could ask in a survey, and it could be maybe to a different group of consumers or a split sample, but I could ask also, how much would you be willing to pay for gas at just a local station? So in this case, the local station is a generic. It's a generic, like there's no name associated with it, and the Shell is. And so what you would expect is a difference in amount, average difference in amount between what somebody would spend at Shell versus another station. And the difference between those 2 values is what we would associate with brand equity. So if on average people were willing to spend $2.70 a gallon at Shell, and on average they were willing to spend $2.50 at a local station, the difference is 20 cents a gallon, and that is the relative difference that the name Shell has in this question. So that's, you could attribute that to the equity that Shell has created in its brand name through its brand assets and associations and perceived quality, brand loyalty, and brand awareness. So they've worked on those 5 elements to increase its brand equity, and that's how we measure it. Another way we can do this, and a similar way or similarly, we could provide a price and we could measure likelihood to buy. And difference in likelihood to buy would be, and maybe another way we could look at brand equity and its effect on consumers. So in this example, we have how much do you like this $799 Sony flat screen? Or we could ask, like, how likely are you to buy it? And then another question, again, similar like the last one, we'd ask a group of consumers, how much do you like this, or how much would you be willing to pay, or how likely would you be willing to buy the $799 unknown brand? And so we could put a generic brand in here. We could just put a fictitious name in there if we wanted to. But what we want to do is we want to look at the difference in likelihood to buy between Sony and this unknown brand. And then that would also capture for us this brand equity concept, like the value that the brand actually has. Okay, so there are 2 ways then we can measure brand equity, and we get a sense for that. And this actually has real value, real meaning. Here's an example from data that's been collected by Brand Z. Now, Brand Z is a commercial company that has a formula for creating a measure for brand equity. So they have their own formula, which is fairly extensive, but in this illustration, you can get a feel for how brand equity changes over periods of time. So in 2011, market value of Apple, or its brand equity, was estimated at $285 million worth. Over the last 6 years, that value has increased, but so has Google's. And so now actually Google's value of their brand has gone up to be even more than Apple's over this period of time. During the same period of time, IBM's value has dropped out of the top 5. Microsoft's has gone up. McDonald's has dropped, and we've added Facebook and Amazon to the top 5 list. So we can see how like the values of brands go up and they go down, and the way the products are perceived and the things that we do, again, associated with things like its awareness and loyalty and its assets and such, it has an impact on how much the market value is of the firm. So like if somebody was to say, hey, I want to buy Google, they would have to pay for all of Google's assets, plus they would have to pay for the value of the brand itself. And so in some cases, the value of the brand is worth more than anything else it has. And that's why this is important. That's why we want this to be something that we can measure. Okay, so this talk here today spends a little bit of time talking about strategy. There are a bunch of strategies associated with branding, so that's just something to keep in mind. We do a lot of different things as they deal with the branding process. And the other thing, other than the strategies, which all use the value of the brand to leverage, the last thing is how do we create that value and how do we measure that value, and to know that that value is something we call brand equity. Okay, so that finishes this up.